Hi, I'm Todd Jones, host of the podcast Pressbox Access. Here's a clip from my interview with Tim Smith. Tim talks about being in the middle of a cyclone as beat reporter covering the Cincinnati Bengals under coach Sam Wyche. And you also had such a team, a very talented team in the Bengals of those days, with a lot of great talkers, a lot of guys who went on to do media careers, really.
Yeah.
And you
Collinsworth is still doing it.
Yeah, Chris Collinsworth, Boomer Esiason,
yeah.
Solomon Wilcots. You had all these guys, and it was a great locker room. So for a young guy like me to walk in, it was really eye-opening to like, this is what the business is like. And then you had a head coach like Sam Wyche. And Sam would meet you like 3 times a day. He didn't care. I mean, he was talking, and training camp, his room was down the hall from you at Wilmington College. You just go down and knock on Sam's door in the evening.
And he'd fill your notebook.
He'd fill your notebook. It was
every day.
Incredible.
The most amazing thing about covering Sam was that I don't know what you guys had to do at the Post, but at the Inquirer, I had to write a main story, a sidebar, and a notebook. I had 3 things to write every day. And basically, to do the notebook, all you had to do was bring up some topic to Sam.
Right.
I don't care if it was like grilled cheese sandwiches or, like Sam, what's the best grilled cheese sandwich you ever had? Well, I'll tell you, I was in San Francisco. I was the backup to somebody, and, Walsh sent me out to Fisherman's Wharf to get, he would have like these amazing stories about the simplest, craziest things.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about Sam when he passed a couple of years ago. Yeah. Such a brilliant offensive mind and just a different character. We covered a lot of coaches in our careers, but covering Sam to me was so unique. What do you recall about covering Sam, other than the fact that he liked to talk?
I'll give you 2 Sam stories. One was, and I don't know if anybody still does this anymore because I haven't covered football in a long time. But we used to go to the Saturday walkthrough at the team before they flew out. And I remember one Saturday morning, I had my 2 daughters, and one was like a toddler, and the other one was, not too far from a toddler. She might have been 3. And so I went to the walkthrough because nothing ever happens at a walkthrough. And
except
on this day, they were playing like Tampa Bay. And I'm trying to remember the defensive end's name. The guy first name was Jim. But anyway.
Jim Scow.
Yeah.
Jim Scow.
They traded him that day, Saturday, to Tampa Bay. So I'm there with my 2 kids, and I say to Sam, Sam, I got to go in and talk to Jim. Can you, watch my kids? And Sam said, no problem. He's like, I got a daughter, no problem. He said, bring him to the office and, sit the little one here in this chair and, put the other one here. And, he said, you're not going to be long, so just sit him here. He said, I'll watch him, no problem. Right? So I go, and I said, I'm going to take the baby. I said, just watch the toddler. I said, I'm going to take the baby with me. So I'm standing there. Jim Scow is like in tears. I'm balancing a baby. I'm trying to take notes. He's like crestfallen because, the Bengals were a good team.
Right.
And Tampa sucked, and he was getting traded, right? So I'm balancing, the child, and I'm taking notes, and Jim is just like he must think he's in a Fellini movie because here's a guy talking to him with a baby at like the worst point of his career at this point.
And meanwhile, Sam is watching your other child.
And I'm thinking, what the heck is Sam doing? So I come out of the locker room, and I don't know if you remember like that little trailer thing they had.
Oh, yeah.
But there was like
literally a trailer, right?
Yeah, It was literally a trailer. But there was that long hallway with the coaches' offices and stuff, and Sam had an office. And so I leave the locker room, and I see my kid just like running down the hallway, and she's just giggling and laughing and everything. And she's just bouncing off the walls and running and, just running through the hallways and everything. And I'm like, what? So I go to Sam and said, Sam, I said, why is this child like so, energetic? And he's like, oh, we've just been eating candy. And I was like, her mother doesn't give her candy. She's on a sugar high, man. Sam's like fed my kid all of this candy to keep her quiet while I'm in the locker room.
That was probably the end of Sam's babysitting career.
and the other Sam story was, I mean, just the human side of Sam. When I took the job at the New York Times, the Cincinnati Enquirer decided not to send me to the Super Bowl, and this was the year that the Bengals had instituted the hurry up offense,
Mm-hmm.
and the league had come down on them and said, you can't use this offense. If you do, we're going to penalize you.
Yeah, they changed the rules, right?
They changed the rules, but they changed
midstream.
the rules in the middle of the stream, right? They just made a rule against Sam, and so the Buffalo Bills were, going to use the same, offense, the same, offensive set in the playoffs. So the New York Times called me and they said, I was already leaving the Cincinnati Enquirer, and they weren't going to send me to the Super Bowl. So Sam said, if you're not going to go to the Super Bowl, why don't you come over to my house and watch the game with me and Jane?
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, okay. I was like, you mind if I write, you mind if I write a story about it for the New York Times? And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So, which was like my parting shot to it was a horrible thing to do to the Enquirer, but I was leaving anyway. And their punishment for me leaving was not to send me to the Super Bowl.
Did Sam have a bunch of candy for you at the house when you got there?
No, but here's the thing though. His wife went and got all the dolls, like his daughter had like these Barbie dolls and stuff, and got all the dolls and let my daughters like play with the dolls. Sam made a fire in the fireplace, ordered pizza, and he sat there and just talked about, the frustration of watching his offensive set being used by a team in the AFC Championship game after he had been not allowed by the league to use it.
Right.
And it was
valid point, right?
It was a completely valid point, and just the pain of being able, just the pain of having to sit there and watch that unfold, in the biggest football game of the year. And so I wrote the story for the New York Times, and and so it came out in the New York Times, and I remember Greg Noble, and I love Greg, and but I felt bad for Greg. Because I know he didn't make the decision about not sending me to the Super Bowl. But I remember how crestfallen Greg was that I had done that, and that I hadn't told him. But, that was one of the regrets that I had at the Cincinnati Enquirer, that I didn't tell him that I parted ways, in such a bad, I left in such a bad way. But
one other thing about Sam was that he was such a complex guy that there were things about him that weren't good, too, in terms of, I mean, you were at the game in Seattle in 1990, and after they lost to the Seahawks, he barred Denise Tom from USA Today from entering the locker room. And like, what are you doing, dude? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I didn't understand that, because it didn't really fit into who the man was. I mean,
right.
He would always tell the story about how, he roomed with like one of the first gay players. What was the guy's name? Jerry Smith or something with the Washington Redskins. He roomed with like one of the first gay players. I mean, he was like such an open-minded guy that it was hard for me to reconcile a guy who was so innovative and open-minded and progressive in his thinking with being just a caveman and a Neanderthal when it came to this issue. And I remember when, Denise came back to the press box, and she was saying, Sam Wyche, locked me out of the dressing room. And I said to her, I said, no, it must have been a security guy. And she said, no, it was Sam himself, because the security guy said that Sam had given the order not to let any women in the locker room. And I was like, nah, it couldn't have been Sam. I couldn't reconcile. So I called the hotel, and I got Sam on the phone at the hotel. And, Sam is going through all of this stuff that, we don't conduct business in the nude, and the Supreme Court they're not naked when they render these decisions, and and I got a responsibility to the wives of these athletes and not to have them being naked in front of other women. And I'm like, where is this coming from?
Right.
You know,
Where, Sam? I mean, seriously.
yeah. So I said to him, this is the only time that I have ever done this in my entire career. And I said, Sam, you don't want to say this. You don't want to do this, because I knew that the commissioner was coming into town. I knew Tagliabue was coming into town to talk about to meet with some business leaders in Seattle, like the very next day.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Sam, you don't want to do this. He's like, yes, I do. He's like, I want to be on the record. I said, Sam, for the second time, you don't want to do this. And he says, yeah, I do want to do this because it's something that needs to be said. And if I don't say it, then who's going to say it? And I said, okay, it's your funeral. So I wrote the story. And the weird thing was, the story didn't run in the Cincinnati Enquirer because it was after deadline.
Right. It was so late.
When I got the story. But I gave the quotes to a reporter from the LA Times, and he, credited me with getting Sam, and which was a weird kind of thing because the story wasn't in the Cincinnati Enquirer. But the very next day, the commissioner came down so hard on Sam, because Sam embarrassed the commissioner, embarrassed the league, and here's the commissioner speaking to business leaders in Seattle, and he's got this coach that's completely out of step with the way things should be done.
It was only 2 weeks after Lisa Olson had been harassed in the New England players' locker room. So
and I mean, the timing of it, and I still remember Sam doing his weekly press conference because they stayed in Seattle because they were going to go down to LA to play the Rams the next week, so they decided to stay in Seattle. And I still remember Sam doing his Wednesday press conference in a loincloth.
Oh, God.
At a pool.
Jesus.
At an indoor pool at the hotel. And he's like, yeah, you're gonna say I'm a caveman. I'm going to dress like a caveman. And I'm like,
Yeah, there was obviously never a dull moment with Sam. And in some ways, he should have been in New York for the tabloids to have fun with.
Oh,
because he would have been right for the back page, right?
Every day he would have been on the back page. Who he would have been? He would have been a nicer version of Rex Ryan.
That's interesting.
He would have been a nicer version of Rex Ryan. Because Rex was a little eccentric, but there was a meanness to Rex's eccentricity.
Right.
Right. But Sam, I don't really think that Sam was like a mean-spirited kind of guy. He was just like this loopy guy. And I don't know if you remember, Todd, when when they were going to fire him and they brought him back, that Paul Brown said it was because his sugar levels were off.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
And he made him carry peanuts in his pocket.
Yeah.